Okay, so this is the bottom of, I guess, the Yud Testament base. Is that true? Yud Testament base. Bottom of Yud Testament base. Oh, I'm sorry, just going a little bit back. Okay. Tanu Rabbanan. So the Mishnah on top spoke about the different levels of Chulin, Meiser, Truma, Kodesh, Chatas. And yesterday, the point was about Meiser. Yesterday's sugya, we started, the first sugya was about the difference between Meiser and Chulin. That's only according to Rabbanan. I just would like to maybe make a correction. I'm not sure if I said it correctly at the end of the day. Let me just take this off a second. But the Mishnah in the beginning, it said, yesterday I said that it comes out, according to the Maskana, that means for Truma bread, when you're eating bread, and Meiser, even if you're eating other kinds of food besides bread, but only if you're eating it, and Truma is even if you just touch it. So it comes out, even the Mishnah is very general, it says not only a line for all three, but the different levels. Chulin is only for eating bread, Meiser is only for eating, but even not bread. And that point was a machlokas between Rav Meir and Rabbanan. If that's true, then only, if the Mishnah means that, then it's only according to the Rabbanan of Rav Meir. Rav Meir says no difference between Chulin and Meiser. And Truma is even, everybody holds, is even for touching Truma becomes a Shlishi. Stam Yadayim Ma'ashen becomes a Shlishi. That's what it said yesterday. I just thought today that once the Gemara says Chulin is talking about Chulin bread, and it's only eating Chulin bread, so then it has nothing to do with Rav Meir. Rav Meir would agree to that also. And Meiser, you also could say it's talking about, both of them are talking about eating bread. It happens to be that maybe it could be Rav Meir, and it's not saying that Meiser is even if eating other peiros also. Just the thought about, but that's how halacha comes out. It seems that Chulin, we have passed like the Rabbanan, so not dying the Chulin for eating bread, Meiser for even eating other kinds of foods besides bread, and in general, just touching it wouldn't make it a shlishi, and Truma, just touching it makes it a shlishi also. The Gemara starts about Kavanah. The next part of the Mishnah is based on the part of the Mishnah that says about when you go to the mikvah for a certain Kavanah, so it's only good for that Kavanah and above, but it's not and below, but it's not good for that Kavanah and above. Above that Kavanah, it's not good. Like if somebody went to the mikvah for Chulin, it doesn't help for Meiser. For Meiser, it doesn't help for Truma. This is all Rabbanan, all milas Rabbanan, because with the Meiser there's no difference. You went to the mikvah, But the Kavanah that you have helps for that and not above. But not for something above it. And also the Mishnah said, if you have no kavanah, then it's not good. The Gemara's discussion, the first discussion we're going to talk about is you have to have kavanah for tara of chulin, which would be goes go both to mikvah and also in the Netilas Yadayim. If he did it without kavanah, it's very relevant. If a person would have washed his hands, halachically correct, but he didn't do it for the purpose of becoming tohar of his hands or for his guf. So is it good enough? That's a very basic question. Do you have to have kavanah for tara? There's nothing to do with mitzvah sirchas kavanah because nothing to do with the mitzvah. It's not a mitzvah. It's just a question of tara. But how does the tara work? You have to have kavanah in order that the tara should take place. Tana Rabbanan. 5 lines from the bottom. Somebody washes his hands. Netilas Yadayim. Niskaven yadav taros. Lo niskaven yadav tameis. If you have kavanah, it works. If it doesn't have kavanah, it doesn't work. So here it says you do need kavanah. Then same thing, Tevilas Yadayim, there's Netilas Yadayim and Tevilas Yadayim, to putting into the mikvah. The same thing, you have to have kavanah. This kavan yadav Torah, no kavan yadav tameis. If you have kavanah, it works. If not, it doesn't work. So the first verse says you have to have kavanah in order to do Netilas Yadayim or Tefillah. Also Tefillah Laguf coming up, no difference. You have to have kavanah. But Tanya, the verse, another verse says the opposite. Ben is kavan, ben lo kavan yadav Torah. That even without kavanah it works. Stira, the two verses. The green is the green, the yellow is the yellow. The Brisa that says you don't need kavanah is for chulin, and the Brisa that says you do need kavanah is lamaisa or something above that ma'isa truma. Then you have to have kavanah, but chulin does not have to have kavanah. So that's today's sugya. The first sugya, please. Do you have to have kavanah for chulin? Tara is chulin. If you're netilas yadayim, tefilas haguf, you have to have kavanah. Someone went into a mikvah just for no reason, whatever, for a bath. So if it's a kosher mikvah, then it would also help for chulin. That's what it seems to say so far. For chulin, you don't need kavanah. The Gemara is going to want to see if this is true. And we're not saying with the chulin law by kavanah. What's the proof to say that chulin does not need kavanah? So the Gemara is bringing a proof. This is not going to be about tefillah shadayim. Tefillah shadayim is about the whole group. It says gal shenitla shubor by himself and nafal ala adam ala kelim Torah in the Mishnah that says that a wave, a person was near the ocean and a wave was detached and it had 40 saw, body of water that's 40 saw came falling down on him. So he didn't go to the mikvah came to him. So it says that is good. It fell onto a person who wanted to kelim, so they became Torah. There was no kavanah over here. It seems there was no kavanah, it just fell onto him. Now the person, you could say that when he saw the wave coming, so then there's a good opportunity. So it could be that he was mechavan, but the kelim is, the Marx understands that the kelim was showing not kavanah. It fell onto the kelim and it's Torah. Katani Adam Dumi the kelim. So since it puts it together in the same breath, it sounds like both of them are the same halacha. Ma kelim blo mechavan, yavodim blo mechavan. Both of them there was no kavanah, and you see that it works. The fact that the wave came onto the person or the kelim without kavanah, it works. So it's a good tahara. So the Gemara thinks that you have a proof over here that chulin does not need kavanah. It says other places you do need kavanah. That's going to be talking about ma'aser, truma, kachim. But for chulin, it seems to be a good raya. You don't need kavanah. But the Gemara is going to disprove, deflect. The proof is not a proof. Who says maybe it's talking about that he's expecting. He's sitting by the ocean side and he's expecting. He sees big waves. Maybe a wave is going to come. Maybe it's going to come all the way to him. It doesn't have to mean that he's waiting that a wave is going to be in the flush. Even if a wave wouldn't be in the flush, it happened to be. It wasn't a flush over here. But the fact that the wave came, he was expecting a wave to come. He's thinking, I'm not going to go to the water. The water might come to me. So maybe that's the case. He was sitting over there with the kelim, and the kelim, and the case of the kelim was also talking about such a case that he's expecting. He's hoping that mikvah, the water might come on to the kelim. So the Gemara is not impressed with the proof. It could be that the case over here is that you do have kavanah, and it wouldn't be a raya to this yisod that chulin does not need kavanah. The Gemara has to explain the chitema. If that's the case, that he's expecting the water to come on, there's no issue of kavanah. The Mishnah is not coming to tell you don't need kavanah. So what's the chiddush in the Mishnah? The Gemara doesn't see a chiddush that it's a kosher mikvah. We would have been very surprised. A wave that falls onto you is a kosher mikvah, but the Gemara doesn't see it as a chiddush. Like, why not? It should be a kosher mikvah. But the Gemara says it's going to be a chiddush in the fact that it's a kosher mikvah, not the point of kavanah. You have to have kavanah, but there's going to be a chiddush in the aspect of it being a kosher mikvah. There's a reason why you might think that it's not a kosher mikvah because of a gzera. Means inherently the Gemara doesn't see a reason why it shouldn't be a kosher mikvah, but there are two possible gzeras we would have made to invalidate this mikvah. One is that you might think if this is kosher, then so too a running body of water down the mountain also might be kosher. If he says over here that he's sitting by the ocean and a wave of water falls on him, it got detached from the yam and it fell on him, it's a good mikvah. You might think that also if I'm sitting on the mountainside and it comes rolling down a body of water, also 40 saw is also a good mikvah. And over there it's not good. Rashi says the reason why it's not good is because mikvah is only only when it's gathered, what we call a mikvah. The word mikvah means gathered water, but if it's on the move, zochalin, moving water, so rainwater is not matahir in that state. Only ma'yan. If it's a ma'yan, then a ma'yan, natural springs of water, or the yam also is matahir even if it's on the move. But rainwater is only matahir when it's settled, when it's gathered. And you might think that this is kosher. You might think that that's also kosher. You would make a gzera. Kamash malon, you don't. And if the body of water falls onto him, the ocean water is nitlash and it falls onto him, it's kosher, and you don't make this gzera. Another possible gzera you might have made is Russian not to keep in. Russian means the head of the wave, the front of the wave, and you're sitting on the floor, standing on the floor, sitting on the floor, and the wave, the head of the wave comes onto you and still touching the floor. For that split second, it was on the floor. Didn't have any walls to hold it in place, but the water came crashing down on you, so it was touching the floor, and it was also you were inside that body of water, so you're in the mikvah. It's a good mikvah. But if you would have the kippin is the curve of the water. There's a wave that is in the ocean, and it also touched it, and it touched the rosh touched the floor, but there's still the curve of the water, even though it was detached, is the curve of the water. And are you allowed to put something into that curve of water that doesn't have water under it? Again, if the picture would be like a curve, that a curved wave, and the front of the wave, part of the wave, or while it's flying, or once it even landed, but part of it is still curved. So I'm not sure in the second case, but surely if it's a flying body of water detached, and you would put the kli into the body of water, it's surely not a good mikvah because it's not on the ground. Like the Gemara is going to say, the Gemara is going to say in a second that it's not good because it's in the avir, it's just flying. That's really not good. It has to be that it's touching the floor. So you might think that if you're going to say that you're allowed to be, it's a kosher mikvah, if the water lands on you, you might think that also it's good, even the part that is not touching the floor. Kamashma, you don't make exera. The Gemara says in the 2 lines in the parentheses, and why is that taka not good? The Tanya, it's a brayso, the fish that you could if the head of the wave reaches the ground and you're there, so then you're in the water and it's touching the ground, but you can't be matbil, tobel, or matbil in the air, in the water that is not attached to the ground. The fish and matbil and ba'avir, there's no such a law of having a mikvah in the air. It has to be on the ground. So we tried to get a proof. All this just to hazard over. We tried to bring a proof to the halacha that you don't need kavana for chulin because there has a case here of a wave that fell onto a person or kalim, and it says that it's a good mikvah. And the Gemara thought the first impression that it was no kavana. He didn't intend that it should get tor, and surely by the kalim and surely by and the adam, and that would be the chiddush of this mishnah. The Gemara says it's not the case. The case was he was mechaven, he was expecting it, he was waiting for it. And the chiddush will be something else, that it's a kosher mikvah, and you don't make all these gzeros. So we said the halacha so far that chulin does not need kavanah, but we didn't succeed in proving it. The Gemara tries again to prove it, and this is going to be a good proof. Ela mihadatnan heiros shenaflu v'soch hamas hamayim u'pashad mi shodav tmeos v'notlam yodav toros. Oh, peiros einandi b'chiyutan. It continues to say more halachas. I just highlighted the part that will be the proof. It says it again 2 times the same thing. Yodav toros 2 times it says. Both of those times is going to be a proof that you don't need kavanah. He also says Yodav toros. What's the case over here? That peiros, fruit fell into a amasamayim, a river, and he stuck his hand into it to get the peiros. So his hands were tummy. His hands were tummy. He stuck his hands in to get the fruit. His hands became torah because it's like a mikvah. Did he have intention to no, he wanted to just get out the fruit, and his hands become torah. That's fresh right that you don't need kavanah. That's the guy's going to be the raya. Just finish off the mishnah already. It says the peiros ain't b'chiyutan. There's another halacha that's not to us now. That's in machshirin. This is the mishnah in machshirin, which means that food, that in order that they should become vulnerable to tumah, only if they became wet. But only if they became wet with the person's nichusa, that he was happy about that water being detached and that's kind of water that's on the fruit now. So here in the first case, the fruits fell into the water. Did he want it to fall into the water? No, he wasn't interested in falling. It fell by mistake into the water. So even though they got fully wet, but when he takes it out, it was not mukhshal kabul tumah because he didn't want it. It wasn't b'chiyutan. It wasn't nichusa. He wasn't happy about it, and therefore the parents are not mukhshal. In the b'chiyutan means that they're not considered mukhshal. They're not vulnerable to tumah. If he put his hands into the water in order to take them out and also to wash his hands, if he was interested in washing his hands, so as far as his hands becoming Torah, for sure I thought Yodav Torah like before. If you don't need kavanah for chulin, there's no difference if you put it in to get the peiros or to wash his hands. It's no problem. He doesn't have to have kavanah for chulin. But the peiros are in the sefer where he wanted to wash his hands, so he was happy about the water that was on his hands. So then it's considered nichusa water. The water is considered as nichole, and then even though the fact that it's on the fruit is not Dafke's interest, that's enough to make it considered b'chiyutan. All that is not a get to us to think about the hechsher, but the issue about the hands being torn, that's how much to get to us. And it says here that you don't need kavanah for chulin. The Gemara's kasha on that. The reason why it also came in is because of our Mishnah. Our Mishnah seems to say the opposite. And the Gemara quotes that. I just highlighted it in red to be like a kasha. Our Mishnah says, it says if somebody went to the mikvah for the intention of making himself Torah for chulin, it works for chulin, but it doesn't work for Meiser. That Meiser Sheni is a higher level, he has to have kavanah for Meiser. But it sounds like even by the chulin, it only works because he was huchzak. Huchzak in, the huchzak low. Doesn't it sound like even for chulin, it only helps if he intended that he should do it, he should become Torah. But if he went in stam, he went for a swim, he went for a bath, then it wouldn't work. So it's not not a kasha on you. I just want to make how relevant this whole sugi might be, that if a woman goes to the mikvah, goes to the yam, does that mean that she might be going to the mikvah also? A person, it would be possible if you hold that chulin does not need kavanah. So then, if even if she's not doing it to that intention, a non-religious person, and she's had a menstrual cycle, and she went for a swim in the yam, even a mixed, whatever she's doing her things, but she went into the yam. Maybe if you don't need kavanah, maybe it's a kosher mikveh. I think he's based on this. So this is mamish sugya. This is one of the sugyas over here. Just to point out, if a person washes his hands down after the bathroom, if you hold the chulin, if he did a kosher, if everything was kosher about the natila, thus he didn't intend to do it for bread, but the sugya seems to say that chulin does not need kavanah. So only meiser and truma, but chulin does not need kavanah. So I just want to bring out how relevant the sugya might be. I'm not passing it from the sugya, there might be an issue, but that's what it seems to say. So the Gemara thinks that our mission is against that because it says that and also the seems like he did intend to make himself tor for chulin. You're saying you don't need kavanah at all. And you're saying you don't need kavanah for chulin. The Gemara answers, it doesn't mean that he's only kosher for Torah for chulin if he had kavanah. It's coming to say the extreme chiddush the other way, that it doesn't help for mice even though he had kavanah for chulin. If he didn't have kavanah, then it's good for chulin. Not to say that chulin also has to have kavanah. Chulin doesn't need kavanah at all. But I wanted to tell you the chiddush extreme that for mice it's not good, even though he had kavanah for Torah, it still doesn't help because he didn't do it for mice, only did it for chulin. But as far as the chulin itself, it doesn't need kavanah at all. Kasha number 2, also from our Mishnah, Esvei. It says in the Mishnah, after it finishes the whole list, it says for chulin doesn't work for mice doesn't work for truma doesn't work for kodshim doesn't work for paraduma. It says it works better, it works for the Tova L'chomer, it does help for the cow. If he didn't have any kavanah, it's like nothing. Doesn't that sound like it's nothing? My love kilu l'tova klal. It says if he didn't have kavanah, then it's not good for anything. Doesn't that sound like it's not even good for chulin? The Gemara says no. Lo kilu l'tova l'maisa v'tova l'chulin. It just means it doesn't work for meiser and up, but it does work for chulin, which sounds like a very big dochak. It says kilu l'tova. So the Gemara itself says it sounds like a dochak. Usava the chuye kamatchile. He who was told this answer said like it's a dochik to say such a thing. The Mishnah means lo taval, it means it's not good for meiser, but it is good for chulin. But the meiser found the brisa says so beferish. Nafak dok ba'ashkach. He went out and he checked and he found the brisa. The Tanya taval v'lehofzak also the meiser and mutal chulin. It says openly that even if he had no kavanah at all, it's not considered a tefillah for meiser, but it is considered a tefillah for chulin. And that's the end of the sugya that chulin does not need kavanah. In Shulchan Aruch it says lachatchila you should have kavanah because there's a Rashba that says because of other sugyas he says not a pashut pshat in our sugya, but the pashut reading in our sugya, which Mishnah Berurah says real poskim, is that chulin does not need kavanah. But it says lachatchila you should have kavanah, and even in the Ebed he says to make your hands dirty again in order to wash with the bracha to be choshesh for the shita of the Rashba that chulin does need kavanah. But the simple pshat in our Gemara says that chulin does not need kavanah. A little bit here. New sugya. Amar Rabbi Elazar. Taval va'ola machzik asmo l'chol mashiyah. So here the person went to the mikvah and he came out of the mikvah. And we said before, you have to be machzik yourself. You have to be machzik. You have to hold yourself for myself. For chulin, we said you don't need. We just finished saying about chulin you don't need. But for any kind of level of tara above that, for myself, truma, kachim, you have to have in mind that you want it to be a certain level, whatever level you want. So it says, Taval va'ola machzik asmo l'chol mashiyah. He came out of the mikvah. We would have thought that this kavanah has to be before you go to the mikvah, before you immerse. But here it says, even if you came out already, you still could now label yourself to whatever you want, any level that you want. Taisa says, as long as you're still the water is still wet. Taisa says that only if the water is still wet on you. If not, then you're out of the mikvah. It can't be 5 hours later. You're going to decide I want to be that the tefillah should be good. It has to be still some shaykhs to the mikvah. So even though you're out of the mikvah, Taisa says as long as you're wet, you could intend that the tefillah should be for any level that you want. There's a kasha from a brisa that says differently. But Allah should be in the brisa says as long as you have to have 1 foot inside, you have to at least have 1 foot. Some part of you should still be inside the mikvah. Then you could change the status that you intended for. But if you went out, both feet are out already, then it's too late and you can't change. The first brisa said that not Rabbi Elazar said it. So Rabbi Elazar against the brisa. The brisa says that only as long as a foot is the part of you is still inside, then you could change your status. But if you came out completely, you can't change your status. And he says even if you came out completely, you could change your status. Seems to contradict. My love ain't a machzik klal. Doesn't the brisa seem to say that you can't label yourself anymore at all? No, maybe not. it'll be like this is going to be the answer. There was two brises that were contradicting, yellow and green, they were contradicting. The blue is going to be the reconciliation. Oh, there you are, like Masik. Allah, in Lochzik Masik, in Lochzik Eno Masik. If he's still in the water at least 1 foot, so then he could even change his status. But if he's out, once he came out, he can't change his status anymore. But if he did not make his status at all, then he could. What does the Gemara say? There are 2 points. One is that he did have in mind for a certain status, whatever it might be. Chul and Ma'aseh Truma, he had a certain status. He made a kavanah for a certain status. Then it's harder to change a label. In short, we'll just say it in short, it's harder to change a label than to put a label on something which was not labeled. So if he had no label, the first case that it says as long as he's still wet, even if he's out of the mikvah, is when he didn't label himself anything. He went to the mikvah without any kind of kavanah. So then he can put a label on his tefillah as long as he's still wet, even though he's out of the mikvah.
And he can even make it for a higher kedusha, like
not a thing about higher. He didn't make it to anything yet. He didn't make it to anything. You're saying he can make it to any level. He can make it for chatas. He can make it to any level that he wants as long as he's still wet, even if he's out of the mikvah. But if he did label himself when he went to the mikvah, he had in mind for a certain level, whatever it might be, ma'aser, chulin, whatever, truma, he had a certain level in mind. So then he only could change himself as long as 1 foot is inside. But once he came out of the mikvah, he can't change it anymore. It's harder to change a label than to put a label on for the first time.
I'm surprised because once he's 1 foot inside, he's not really taking at that point, he's not taking a mikvah. He's just
We're on the way out of the mikvah. The 1 foot means he's out of the mikvah. He's out of the. He was in the mikvah completely. He immersed. He came out of the mikvah, but he still has 1 foot inside. Of course, all these things are going to be Rabbanans. On the rice level, these things don't work. But we're talking about on the Rabbanan levels, the whole thing of making different levels, the whole point about these milas of having different levels of, it's all Rabbanan. On the rice level, we went to the mikvah. But on the Rabbanan levels, we want him to be machzik for a certain level. So then it says that he can't change it only if he has 1 foot inside. He still has 1 foot inside. If that's good, that's going to be the halacha, it seems. No, it might not be the halacha, but that's what it says so far. The Gemara continues. Who is the author of this halacha that's going to say that having 1 foot in the water still helps to change something? This only goes according to Yehuda. They're not going to argue. And this is a famous Mishnah, the Mishnah, seventh paragraph of Mikvos. People learn this paragraph for a yard side, where it says Neshama over there. So here it says Mikvah Shenimdad. I think this is the mem. This is the mem of the Neshama over there. Mikvah Shenimdad. There was exact mikvah that was measured as exactly 40 saw. And 2 people went to immerse themselves one after the other. The first one went in and came out. Second one went in. The first one is tough because he went into a mikvah of 40 saw. But the second one is tummy because when he went to that mikvah, was missing 40 saw. Less than 40 saw, because when the first person came out, he took some water on him. So it was exactly 40 saw. So the second one doesn't have 40 saw anymore. Simple. But
it's macroscopic. It's just like
no, his hair is full of his body's full of water. It was exactly 40 saw. And now that he went out, it's less than 40 saw. It's a couple of ounces less. I'm Rabbi Yehuda, or better, Rabbi Yehuda Omer. As long as the feet of the first one are still in the water, so then we consider all the water on his body as if it's inside the mikvah. He also agrees that physically it's out of the mikvah. But since the person's feet are still in the mikvah, so all the water that's on it we consider inside the mikvah, so it's still considered 40 saw. So the Gemara said that the halacha before that we say that also the green over here, that as long as he has his foot, at least 1 foot in the water, it's he can still change his status. We said it's not, as far as not change, to label him for the first time, as even if he's out of the mikvah, that's not again to us now. But if he did label himself, he wants to change his label, so change the level, the status of that mikvah, of that immersion. So then he has to at least have a foot in the water. The only one who says that having a foot in the water makes a difference is only Rabbi Yehuda. According to Rabbanan, this concept doesn't exist. The same way over there, when they say that it doesn't help to consider his body inside the mikvah because his foot is inside the water, so too they're not going to say that having 1 foot in the water doesn't help that you can still be considered inside the mikvah and you should be able to change your status. So that's what, according to that, we're going to pass again. We're not going to pass like this green halach over here because we don't pass like Rabbi Yehuda. We pass over there that like the Tanakh, like Rabbanan, that once the first one went out of the mikvah, and the water was taken out, even though his feet are still inside the mikvah, it's not considered that the water is all down. So maybe we're not going to pass like this halacha. We're not going to pass in that he could change his status even if his feet is inside the mikvah. We're not going to pass like this halacha because the Gemara says it only goes according to Rabbi Yehuda. We're going to pass like Rabbi Yehuda. The Gemara continues with a possibility that maybe it will still be even according to Rabbanan, and that's going to be the issue. Aval mitumah l'tara divrei hakol hasheni tameh. Behind the Rapidas. This question about we just learned about going into the mikvah was exactly what he saw. The first one went in, took out some water with him. The second one goes in. The first one still has his feet inside. So Rabbi says that it's good. The Rabbanan says it's not good. What kind of a mikvah? This is the gear to everybody who learns the seventh parak in mikvah is how to understand the Mishnah. Rabbi says that it's good. So the Gemara says that if it would be mamish tumah v'tara, if it would mamish be a question of a real tumah, so then even Rabbi Yehuda will not say this leniency that is considered that the water is down. Even Rabbi Yehuda, even Rabbi Yehuda will agree that the second one doesn't, that you don't consider the water that is still inside the mikvah, even according to Rabbi Yehuda, only if it's a kind of a malas rabbanan, only if it's a chumrah, that the whole mikvah is only a chumrah. They're really a Torah, and you're going for some kind of a chumrah. We'll see as the parak goes on. There are cases of malas rabbanan. So then, even though you're Torah really, so it's just a chumrah to have some kind of a chumrah. So then Rabbi Yehuda says that you can use this longus, that the water is still considered inside the mikvah. But if it's a real issue of tumah, he's really tummy and he has to get tor. We're not going to say that the water on the person who's out of the mikvah with his feet inside is considered inside. But machlokes is by malas rabbanan, and let's say this case over here would be a good example maybe. Or they raglachas b'mayim. This is the case of malas rabbanan. The point about changing his status, what he wanted to total for to be machzik, is only a rabbanan concept. The malas rabbanan. It's not a real daraisa.
What do you mean by malas?
A malot can make higher levels. Malas rabbanan means that the daraisa is good, and rabbanan made more stringencies for high levels of tumah, like meiser, truma. They made all these different things. That's only chumas rabbanan. So he says that even Rabbi Yehuda, that it permits the water on the top person to be considered in the mikvah, that is still 40 saw, is only when it's on chumah rabbanan. But on the real tumah to make it Torah, he's not going to say that langus. And rabbanan say that it doesn't even work for rabbanan. So then that's how the Rapidas. Rapidas said that this halacha before, that the person could change his status as long as one foot is in the mikvah, only goes according to Rabbi Yehuda. The rabbanan wouldn't agree to it. That fits very well, because even though it's only a question of malas rabbanan, the rabbanan say that you don't say this langus even for malas rabbanan. This halacha is not going to be according to rabbanan. But there's another version in Rav Nachman. Ikeda Amri, top line. Ikeda Amri, Amr Rav Nachman, Amr Rabbi Baravua, Machlokes b'tumah l'tara. That Rabbi Yehuda here goes all the way. Rabbi Yehuda thinks that it's a real way of getting the water down. Because this what the Gemara calls good achis, that all the water that's on the person that has his feet inside the mikvah is considered inside the mikvah, even by a real tumah. And the malas rab and the rabbanan say not. But the malas rabbanan there'd be a kol afasheni Torah. If it only be a question of a chumah rabbanan, this mikvah is going to is only a chumah, then even rabbanan would agree that this langus would work. If so, kligat rapidas. If that's going to be the pshat that rabbanan agree that malas rabbanan you could say this langus to bring the water down, so then he would argue rapidas and say that this halacha before that we said that a person could change his status as long as he has one foot inside the mikvah is good even according to rabbanan. The rabbanan just argued that when it's a real serious thing of tumah l'tara, then it doesn't work. But if it's only a question of a rabbanan, they also would agree. So then this halacha might be true. I think we're passing like the first one, like Rapidas, and the first version that according to the rabbanan it wouldn't work even for malas rabbanan. I'm sorry. Yes, right. And even according to Rabbi Yehuda, that only works for rabbanan. So this halacha that says that he can change his status as long as he has one foot is only going to be according to Rabbi Yehuda. I think the Chafetz Chaim brings down in the Sefer Likutei Halachos that the Rambam left out this whole halacha about changing his status, and he tries to figure out why. So maybe what I said about halacha is I don't mean to say mamish halacha because the poskim don't talk about it, but just to take it what the Gemara says, that is as far as we got so far. We have a little bit more to go. The Gemara is going to go on to a side point now. This second sugi said that as far as labeling himself for which status he wants or changing the label, so if he had no label at all, means he didn't intend for anything. Lo hichzik. So he went to the mikvah without any kind of kavanah, and then he came out and he's still wet. He's all out of the mikvah already, but he's still wet, and he could say, "I wanted this tefillah to be for whatever status he says, ma'aser, truma, kachim, chatas, whatever status he wants." Chulin, of course, we said before, does not need kavanah at all, but he could make the status he could set the label as long as he's still wet, as Taisa says, even though he's out of the mikvah. If he did go to the mikvah with a certain intention of a certain level, so then in order to change it, the Gemara seems to say that it's telling Rabbanan and Rabbanan. According to Rabbanan, it's too late. Once he goes out of the mikvah, he can't change it. He cannot change it. And even if once he goes out of the mikvah, even as long as he immersed already and his head is out, so now he can't. He has to go to the mikvah again.
Fully in the mikvah.
Right, not fully in the mikvah. If he's in the mikvah, he can think that he wants it to be for a different level. But once he comes out, his head comes out. It's not the mikvah anymore. But according to Rabbi Yehuda, as long as he has part of himself in the mikveh, even 1 foot, then he could still change his status. Once the Gemara mentioned Rabbi Yehuda, so we go on a small tangent over here, and maybe that's going to be the rest of the sugya today almost. But the Gemara talks about this concept of Rabbi Yehuda. What did he say? Again, the case was that you had a mikveh that was 40 sa. A person went in, came out, and there's not any more 40 sa in the mikveh, but he has water on him. Rabbi Yehuda holds as long as his feet are on the mikveh, so all the water on him is considered inside the mikveh. The Gemara is going to call that right away good achas. Good achas means to drag and bring down. Good means to schlep, to drag, and achas means to bring down, drag it down. So we look at the person that's his feet are on the mikveh and he has water on him, and all that water is considered dragged down into the mikveh. The mikveh has 40 saw. The other person that went in, he went into a kosher mikveh. Amar Ula said, "Boi, this the gesher should be Beis Ayin Aleph Yud. Boi, I asked. Others have different gersa, but there have been Hanal says like this. I asked of Rabbi Yochanan. Ula said, I asked of Rabbi Yochanan the following question. Rabbi Yehuda, Ma'alahatul Machtan B'Tzinorias B'Rosha Shel Rishon. The Gemara has another lamdish kind of a mikvah. What if we had the case, a person went into the mikvah, exactly 40 saw, he comes out, his feet are still inside, and you want to say that the water is connected to the mikvah. Could you put a small kli? The Gemara gives examples about a needle or some kind of a small tool. Could you put it onto his head of the person who's out of the mikvah already and consider it inside the mikvah? The same way he said that the water on him is considered that it went down, so also the water that's on the mikvah, it be considered that it comes up, and kalim are inside the mikvah. If you say this lump is called good achis, which means drag it down, maybe also drag it up. And that's the most question.
You put on a towel. Forget about it on your head.
What is the towel going to help? You want the towel? You want the towel to become tahor.
Yeah.
You want the towel was tameh. You want the towel to be considered tahor.
He puts it on the head.
In order to make it tahor. He instead of putting it in the mikvah, he says this lump says that the water is all connected. I have water on me, so there's water in my head also. There's some water in my hair, so I'll put the needle into the water on my hair, and it's considered a mikvah because where's 40 saw down there, and it's all connected by his body. The same way Rabbi Yehuda says all the water on him is considered dragged down into the mikvah, so too the water in the mikvah should be dragged up onto the kli which is on his head. Are you going to say that also? The Gemara gives a strange example, but the point is to say he said Ram is good answer can have other.
But the one on the top of his head never was it really in the water.
So bring the water up. Say good asik and the water goes
only
up.
drops, but not the whole amount.
Good asik, the water goes up.
Not
You look at the water as if it's all connected, and it's connected to the water on his head. He has water on his body, and it goes onto his head. And I don't know if you're going to find water on every single spot, a whole line. But the point is that all the water that's in the mikvah is considered elevated until where the needle is, and it's in the mikvah. The same way Abida says that all the water on his body is considered down into the mikvah, so the mikvah is considered elevated onto his head. And
his body was in the mikvah.
What's the difference?
The needle wasn't.
What's the difference?
I know.
We're not talking about the body. We're talking about the water to be considered. We're pulling the water down. We're saying that the water, which is connected to this person, it could be that this person on the top, it doesn't even have to be, it could be that it's even whatever in the mikvah. He took a shower and his feet, it could be that the water that's on him is considered connected to the mikvah. I don't think it has to do. Ama'ula, I asked Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Yehuda, according to Rabbi Yehuda, says that the water goes down and it's considered inside the mikvah, would you be able to immerse needles or these small tools in the head of the first person who came out? Why? What's the question? He only holds that you drag it down, but he doesn't hold you drag it up. It seems that it's harder to do the lumdus, this halacha of dragging it up. It's going to be a bigger chiddush than to drag it down. And even though you see that he drags it down, you don't see that he drags it up. Or the same way he says that you can drag it down, you can drag it up also. That was Rabbi Ula's question to Rabbi Yochanan. Amalei, Rabbi Yochanan replied to Ula, Tinisua, it's a Mishnah. It says, Shalosh gamamiyos benachal, Yona atachtona benso. It's that 3 gamamiyos. Rashi translates according to what the French is, valleys. It means like ditches. There are 3 ditches in a nachal, a top, a bottom, and a middle. And we're going to see, soon it's going to say that there's a connecting factor. Yona b'atachtona shalasim resrim so, benso shalabam so. The bottom and the top, each one have 20 saw. 20 saw is not a mikvah. You have to have 40 saw to be a mikvah. The top one has 20 saw. The bottom one has 20 saw. The middle one has 40 saw. And there is a connecting factor between all of them. And there's some kind of a channel of water, or hydrolus would mean, as we said before, hydrolus, that the running water, there's a running water that's connecting all of them. So the question, surely you could go to the mikveh in the middle one. The middle one is a good mikveh, it's 40 sa. But could you go on the bottom one and the top one? And it seems to say that the bottom one is surely, if you hold good achis, then even the bottom one is good because all the water in the top mikveh. Top and bottom and middle, we mean on the slope of the mountain. There's one on the highest part of the slope, in the middle part of the slope, and the bottom of the slope. So if Yehuda holds good achis, so the water that's in the middle mikveh, which is 40 sa, is considered dragged down to the bottom one. And if you went to the bottom one, it's surely good. The middle one is surely good if you go into the middle one. Even the bottom one is good because the 40 saw that's over there is considered dragged down into the bottom one. And the bottom one is also kosher mikvah. How about in the top one? That's going to be a very good asik. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Meir, Haya Omer, Matul Bel Yonah. Rabbi Yehuda said that Meir says, he called Meir, a colleague, but Meir holds that you also can go in the top one also. So what did he think to say? He thought that the same way Rabbi Yehuda is quoting Rabbi Meir, he holds of it also. And he see that Rabbi Yehuda himself holds that you drag it up also, which is going to be relative to the question before, that if he has his feet in the mikveh and his body is wet and he want to put the machtam mitzinoros on his head, it'll be considered putting it in the mikveh because he dragged the water up.
Who's Meir?
Meir is Reb Meir.
Why isn't that saying Rebbe?
Because Rabbi Yehuda doesn't call Reb Meir, he calls him Meir.
The colleague.
The colleague.
Why does Rabbi Yashiv call Shlomo Zalman?
Why not?
Okay, so but then he told him back, or somebody either the Gemara or Ula told back, but Tanya Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Meir, Haya Omer, Matul Bel Yonah, Bani Omer, Matul Bel Yonah. Don't take it that just because Rabbi Yehuda quoted Rabbi Meir, they agree to it. And the other Bryce, he says, Perish does not agree to it. He says, Meir says like that, but I don't know like that. He holds that he said that the water goes up also. And you say good asik and the top mikveh is good. But I don't agree. I agree on the bottom one is good because good achis. But I don't know that the top one is good.
Is actually more mechumer than that.
Right. So and Amalei Tanya. Rabbi Yochanan said, okay, if it says so, it says so. I thought that he says, Meir says this, he agrees with it. But if he says Perish doesn't agree with it, so then okay, I agree that he doesn't agree. So it comes out there are three opinions. Rabbi Meir is the most makel. He holds that you even say good asik, even drag the water up. Rabbi Yehuda holds you drag it down, you don't drag it up. And Rabbanan argue the whole thing. They say you don't even drag it down either. That's the Mishnah before. We said that they hold once the person goes out of the mikveh, even if his feet are still in the water.
That's chachamim.
That's a chachamim. That's how we seem to paskin. We seem to paskin like Rabbanan that you don't even say good achis, and what we started with, it comes out that we don't paskin like the halach of having your foot inside the water, and even if it's foot inside the water, you can't change the status anymore. That's what seems to come out.
This is the first time I've ever seen the names of Tanaim without.
No, you've seen it before.
I never understand in Shas, you always have, we call people Benazai. It's Tana. We should call him Rabbi Benazai. Hagoyin Gadol, Rabbi.
Sometimes the Gemara says, or somebody says that Gadol Meirab and Shmuel, there is a level that the Hillel, Shammai, they call them on the first name basis over there. So that they talk about that was a very big title. Gadol Meirab and Shmuel, it goes about Rab and Rebbe and Rabban, and then Shmuel. Gadol Meirab and Shmuel. I think it's brought, I don't know, but I think it's brought down in the Aruch from the Gaonim. It's brought down something under the letter Aleph over there. The beginning, always all the way in the beginning. I forgot how it comes in over there. I forgot
What about Rav and Rabba?
Rav is Rav. Rav is the title. But
Abaye,
Shmuel,
Rav.
okay. Could be these are also titles, maybe. They're like maybe abbreviations of titles. But Shmuel, you call him Shmuel. Some places it calls him Mar Shmuel. But I don't know. Okay, but here, even the people who do call Rav, but their colleagues don't call him by the title, they're equals. They don't have to be somebody more if he's not if he's your peer, if he's on the same level.
I don't really understand because you have also you're supposed to be Talmid Chacham Shabbat Mechabim Zeh.
Yeah, but it doesn't. Yeah, but only there's a certain agdara how you do that. You don't feel like it's only like getting up a little bit. So here, as far as the title goes, it's not in place to call him Rav. Yeah, you'll find other ones like that. Okay, the Gemara continues. So we have two sugyas today so far, and we'll review it soon and make the whole summary. We'll go on to the next sugya. So it says that it's good for chulin, it's not good for meiser. So if you have a brisa, have a brisa. Okay, I didn't know. He says if it's a brisa, it's a brisa. It means that he thought that the brisa that says Rabbi Yehuda says Meir says that it's good, and period. That sounds like he agrees to it. But if you have another brisa that says he says so, but I don't agree, so then it doesn't mean that he agreed. If the brisa says perish, that he's quoting Rabbi Meir. Meir says that it's good, but that doesn't mean that I say it's good. I don't agree. I hold that it's not good. The next sugya is a short sugya. The whole doctrine here is very, very short amud over here. So we'll take a few more minutes and then we'll go back and summarize everything we learned today. So it says about the levels of chula and meiser, truma, kachim, paraduma. So it said in the Mishnah that if somebody went for the purpose, but went to the mikvah for the purpose of chulin, it doesn't help for Meiser it doesn't help for Truma, etc. It came out that chulin doesn't need kabbana at all. But it did say that Meiser is considered a level on his own, and if he went to the mikvah for the purpose of making himself talk for chulin, it does not work for Meiser. And again, further, Meiser does not for Truma. But that one point is dependent on the machlokas we had yesterday about Rabbeinu and Rabbanan. Is Meiser Sheni, does it have more chumras than the chulin does? Chulin doesn't become a shlishi, neither, and the question is that Meiser Sheni is it considered more chomer? And yesterday the Gemara said that the machlokas Rabbeinu and Rabbanan about let's just scroll back to yesterday's Gemara to find Rav Meir over there. The Gemara brought down this Mishnah. Kalaton ve'esmaim v'devei sofer mitam es hakodesh apostle as hachuma u'mutar l'chulin l'maisa devei meir v'chomim also l'maisa. It was machlokes that Maisa is considered more chomer than a chulin. And the Gemara seems to say that all the machlokes in between, if there's a difference between Maisa Sheni and chulin, is machlokes Rav Meir and Rabbanan. Rav Meir puts it on the same level as far as Tara goes, and the Chachamim don't. The Chachamim say that Maisa is a higher level. And that's how the Gemara explained yesterday that if you have to do Netilas Yadayim for Maisa Sheni, that according to Rabbi Meir, you don't have to. Even if you would be eating Maisa Sheni, and according to Rabbanan, you do have to. That was yesterday's machlokus. Now the Gemara is going to say wherever it says that there's a difference between chulin and Maisa, it goes according to Rabbanan. According to Meir, there wouldn't be a difference between chulin and Maisa. So the first part of the Mishnah that says that the middle Mishnah we'll call it, that says that if somebody went to the mikveh for chulin, it doesn't help a Maisa. Goes according to the Rabbanan. It's not a Meir. Meir would say that you don't have to. Chulin is as good as Maisa. Mani Mastis and Rabbanan, the Shani Luba and Chulin and Maisa. Who's the author of our Mishnah that says that if someone intended in the mikvah for Chulin, it doesn't help a Maisa. It only goes according to Rabbanan, not according to Meir. Meir would say that it's good. If you intended for Chulin, it's as good as intending for Maisa. But Aim was safer. But look at the rest of the Mishnah. The next case, the third part of the Mishnah, sounds like Meir is talking. It says, Big Yam was Meir is the Pushin, Big Day Pushin Meir is Larfli Truma. Asan Rabbi Meir. Over there it says that the whole list of different levels of Tumah, and it said that of Tara. It means that even if he was considered Torah for a certain level, it doesn't go for a higher level. And over there, not going to the mikveh, but someone who is Amoritz, so everything that the Amoritz does, even if he thinks he's 100% Torah, as far as the Prushim go, he's Tomei Mamish. And something which the Prushim, that they're very big, Tomei the Chacham, everything, but they just did it for Chulin, the Ochlei Truma consider him Tomei. And on, that people are eating karbanis, even though the person who's ochli truma, big tzaddik, chassid jebakuna, it doesn't help because he only did it for truma, so he wasn't making himself Torah on the level of kachim, and so too kachim for chatas. But when it says the whole line, we mentioned this yesterday when we learned the Mishnah, it doesn't say meiser over here. It jumps from chulin to truma. Big day Prushim are people that are careful to eat chulin v'tara, so they're chulin people. But they're big Prushim, the Groisa tzaddikim, and they're very makbid on the halachas of tumah v'tara, the big tamid the chachamim. But their clothing is considered like a tumah chamura as far as ochli truma. But it missed one level over here. It should have said big day Prushim medrash l'maiser, ochli maiser, big day ochli maiser, medrash l'ochli truma. The same way the whole Mishnah goes on and on. It says about maiser, truma, then it goes kachim, then it goes chatas, but it left out maiser over here. It puts maiser and chulin on the same level, and it shouldn't be so. According to Rabbanan, they should have said that maiser is one up, and even though he's considered tohar for chulin, he's tummy for Meiser, and even though he's Torah for Meiser, he's tummy for Truma. But it puts it all together. It says Pushin, that includes everything. And once it jumps right away to Echli Truma. Asam Rav Meir. That's going contra Meir. Rabbanan would have said that there's a step in between. So it's a contradiction from the beginning of the Mishnah to the end of the Mishnah. Asam Rav Meir, Damachulin and Meiser Kadadin. This seems to be Rav Meir talking. That says that Chulin Meiser is the same level, and if he was Torah for Chulin, he is considered Torah for Meiser. You don't say that Meiser Sheni is more chomer. So the question is, you're going to say that the Mishnah changed the authors in between. The first part of the Mishnah was according to Rabbanan that Meiser is a different level, and they say because Rameir holds that Meiser is the same level. So the Gemara says yes, you have to say that in Reish Rabbanan Sefer Rameir, they cut and paste over here a Mishnah of two different Mishnahs, two different authors. The beginning of the Mishnah is according to Rabbanan, the end of the Mishnah is according to Rameir. According to Rabbanan, Taka, there would be another level over here to put a stick in Meiser in between. And Rav Adam Masni B'Sefer, I'll take out the word but no, Masni B'Sefer. That the Hitak has the gears in the Mishnah, not like we have. Hitak has in between, he would say big day Pushin medris le ochle meiser, big day ochle meiser, medris le ochle truma. So then it's Rabbanan, means depends what the version of the Mishnah is. Everyone agrees, both Muslims agree that according to Rabbanan there is going to be another washed with no kavanah at all is good enough. And the Gemara says that it's good. There's a brisa that says that you don't need kavanah, even though one brisa says you do need kavanah. The Gemara says that's only for meiser and above, but for chulin alone you don't need kavanah. The Gemara tried to bring two rice. One didn't work, one did work. It talks about a wave of water that came onto a person in Caleb. It's good. The Gemara wanted to be right that they don't need the kavanah. The Gemara reflects the right. It's not a proof, but after the halacha is going to be like that, so we could say that's the case over there. He was sitting by the ocean side, and a wave came on top of him. He didn't think about it. Then he didn't have kavanah, or came onto Caleb, and he had no kavanah. It's also tohar. You don't need kavanah. Just and then another case, the Gemara says, second Mishnah, that he stuck his hand into a river in order to get out the peiros that fell into it. So his hands are torn. Even though his hands were tummy, his hands are torn. He had no kavanah. Both of these cases, the law is that it's good. The second one is a raya. The first one wouldn't have been a raya. We could say something else over there that it was kavanah, but the Maisa, that's the law that you don't need kavanah for chulin. In the first Mishnah, we also got this chiddush that a wave is also a good mikvah, and if it falls on top of somebody, as long as it touches the ground, while he's inside that body of water, it's a good mikvah, even though it's only for a split second. He can't put something into the wave of the mikvah when it's not attached, it's only flying in the air, then it wouldn't be good. But that's called a bilan ba'avir. But if it did touch the ground, so then it wasn't a mikvah, and it's a good mikvah. There was something there about machshivin, about the peiros, the peiros. That's not our subject right now, but it does say that it only becomes mukhshar if he had nicholei, which is the chiyutan, that he has to have wanted that the water should have been detached, be happy about it. So when he did it in order to get the peiros, stick out his hand, he didn't want the water at all. If he put his hand in order to wash his hands, he did want the water to be on his hands. So then it is b'chiyutan. But we'll learn that in Machshir one day, Be'ez Hashem. The next, that was the first sugya. Kulam does not need kavanah. And the Gemara is matchel mishnayis, even though our mishnayis seem not to say that it says huchsa kulan and kilu lotava, all that. But the Gemara says only talking about meiser, but as far as kulam, you don't need kavanah, and that's the halacha. No, I said that's the halacha. That little correction that seems to be the halacha, and most folks can do say like that. But there is a Rashba that says that that's not pshat in our Gemara. We didn't talk how he learns our Gemara, and the Shulchan Aruch says l'chatchila you should have kavanah for kulam. When you're washing, you should wash the l'chatchila for chulin. You should wash the hands for different reasons, like just after the bathroom or something. So then he would say to wash again. Mishnah Berurah says that if you wash your hands without kavanah, and now you want to wash your hands again with kavanah, that's the Rashba. So make your hands dirty first, like touch your shoe or something in a way that make it dirty, in order that you should be able to make a bracha on the second one. Because benadin you can't say a bracha because you're passing out like the Rashba. But really don't need kavanah. So the wash that you did, if you did a good washing, halachically, if it would have been a good washing with a kli, so then even if you didn't do it for bread, it would be a good kosher natila. So if you want to wash again with a bracha, so make your hands first dirty in a way that you can surely say a bracha.
Scratchy.
Next Gemara talks about your status, that you have to be machzik. The Mishnah says that for meiser and truma, kachim, chatash, you have to make a status. So it says that if you went into the mikvah and you had no kavanah to make it for a status, you wanted to be torah. Yeah, maybe, but you didn't make yourself what intention you did it for. So even if you're out of the mikvah completely, as long as you still have water on you, as it says, you could then label yourself and say, that's what I wanted the mikvah to be for. But once you went out, you can't. There was a brisa that says that as long as 1 foot is in, you could even change your status. But that the Gemara says is dependent on Rabbi Yehuda and the Rabbanan. If you say Benachas, not that it would seem, I don't know as far as Allah Chalamais, I don't know, but it would seem that we don't pass him like Rabbi Yehuda, and therefore you can change your status even if you have 1 foot in. The Gemara brings down the machlokes by Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbanan as far as there was a mikvah mitzvah 40 saw, and the first one person went out, but his feet are still inside. According to Rabbi Yehuda, the water is considered berachas, dragged down, then it's a good mikvah even for the second one. And you pass like the Rabbanan, that it's not good. Once the water is out of the mikvah, you don't say good achis. In Rabbi Yehuda, the Gemara question is, you also hold good asik, that they stuff the water up. And the example the Gemara would give over there would be about somebody who's out of the mikvah and he has machtan tzinoros in his head. Is that going to be a good mikvah if you say you stuff it up? So the Gemara finds Rav Meir says it is good, but the Brisa says Rabbi Yehuda doesn't agree to that. So it comes out 3 opinions. Rav Meir is the most lenient, that it's say even drag the water up. Rabbi Yehuda says drag it down, don't drag it up. The Rabbanan say don't even drag it down. And it seems to pass like the Rabbanan. Also, the case the Gemara says is about 3 mikvahs that are on a slope with some kind of connecting water channel. And it says the middle one is 40, so the top one is 20, the bottom one is 20. That according to Rabbi Yehuda, the bottom one would be good also, not only the middle one. And according to maybe even the top one, it seems according to Rabbanan, none of them are good because you don't say benachas. And the last Gemara spoke about the level of meiser, that it says that there's meiser sheni is considered a higher level than chulin. That's machlokes Rameir and Rabbanan. And there was as far as washing for food that's not bread of Ma'aser Sheni. According to Rabbanan, you do have to wash for that. According to Rameir, you don't have to. And he passed like to Rabbanan. Here the Gemara also talks about the different levels of chulin and Ma'aser. Ma'aser considered a different level. So our Mishnah is, on one hand, the way we have it, part of it is Rabbanan, part of it is Rameir, because it says by the Hachzak over there, it says that Ma'aser is considered a different level than chulin, and Tavel chulin lo chzik l'Ma'aser. But by the case of Big Day Pushin, it just says Big Day Pushin Medish Lochlei Truma. It doesn't say it's Medish Lochlei Ma'aser, and according to Rabbanan, it will be. So that's true. Either the Mishnah is not Rabbanan, or change the gears on our Mishnah, and it should say that. And according to Rabbanan, which we paskin like, Big Day Pushin is Medish Lochlei Ma'aser.
Yashar koach.
Yes, everybody. Thank you. Thank you. We'll be back in a few minutes with Tehillim.
Thank you, Rabbi. May I ask a quick question?
Sure.
Sure. With those three mikvot, the one with 40 sah in the middle, water falling from the top and water falling from the bottom, according to Rabbanim, none of them are kosher?
The middle one is good. The middle one is 40 saw. Middle one is 40 saw. But the one on top and bottom, you have to come on to good achis or good astic. That they seem to say is not good.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Good,
Thank
I
you.
think, good,